Today we started with evaluating some expressions to see if different groups got different answers. And as we worked through these, we did. And what the purpose was here was to show the need for some kind of rules about order of operations. And that was the topic of the day. So these vocabulary words seem like big words, but in reality, this is a numerical expression. 24 divided by 6 times 2. In other words, it just has numbers and some operation symbols. I want you to divide and I want you to multiply. So that's a numerical expression. Today you all showed me facial expressions for surprise and happy and sad. Well, a numerical expression is just a way to say that I want you to divide 24 by 6 and then multiply by 2. Numerical coming from the word numbers. The value of this numerical expression is simply the answer I get when I simplify it. So I do 24 divided by 6 and I get 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. And the rules say when there's only multiplication and division, you just go left to right, dividing and multiplying, or multiplying and dividing in order from left to right. So the value of this numerical expression is simply 8. Evaluating the expression, to evaluate simply means to simplify it and get the answer 8. So this is like the problem, this is the answer, and this is getting the answer. And if that helps you understand the vocabulary better, that's all it means. So we had 4 different people, Gita, Juan, Hyojin, and Carmen, who all had the same problem, but they got 4 different answers. So what your groups had to do, each group was given a person, and you had to figure out how each person got their answer. And the point of this is to see that if you don't know order of operations, you can get as big an answer here as 900 and as small as 42. And then you use your scientific calculators to check, because your scientific calculators have standard order of operations, the rules for order of operations burned into its ROM. And Juan was the only one who did it correctly, and that means that the smallest value of 42 is the correct value when you evaluate the expression in order of operations. So there are no brackets or parentheses, so the first thing you do is the exponent. That's 9, and then you don't add next. After the exponent, you multiply or divide from left to right, and 9 times 4 is 36, and the last thing you do is add the 6, and that's why Juan's was correct. So in mathematics, you cannot be ambiguous. Ambiguous means that one expression has more than one possible value, or that you're confusing. Just as in English, this is an ambiguous phrase, save rags and waste paper. And if I'm thinking environmentally, I don't want you to waste anything. So if I use waste as a verb, that's what it sounds like. But if I change this to an adjective and I say save rags and waste paper, now you know that I want you to save rags and reuse them, and save waste paper, like paper that's only been printed on one side. Use the other side. So the rules in mathematics help all people agree on one correct value when you evaluate the expression. And those are in your book on page 35. You can also look right here. So the first thing is you always do the grouping symbols. And there are more grouping symbols than just parentheses or brackets. This is a division bar. Looks like a fraction. Remember, it means take everything on the top and divide it by everything on the bottom. So if you have a grouping symbol that's a division bar, you do all the operations on the top in order of operations and the bottom, and you divide last. So you do the top first. The square root symbol is a grouping symbol, parentheses and brackets. So first you do that. Secondly, E stands for exponents. You always simplify your exponents next. The third thing you do is multiply or divide from left to right, whatever comes first. And the last thing you do is add or subtract from left to right. So these are acronyms that help you remember, just like AIS is an acronym for the American International School. BEDMAS and PEMDAS are acronyms. The B and the P stand for brackets or parentheses, and then exponents. And this is divide, multiply. This is multiply, divide, because remember, it's from left to right. And the AS, I don't want you to think that always means you add first. You don't add first. You go from left to right with adding or subtracting. So then another acronym that some of you knew is Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. Same thing with the PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiply or divide, add or subtract. And then I taught you the proper way to work down your paper. Notice I have no equal signs. You simply copy the problem. This is evaluate this, copy it here, simplify. 9 times 2 simplified is 18. That means find the answer, and then you bring down, you're going to add 85 to that to show your steps, and you get 103 and circle it. This one I had to do the brackets first. That's how I got 94. Then bring down that the next step is to multiply by 2, and I get 188. So you show the steps of simplifying going down your paper. Again, no equal signs here. First thing I did was brackets. I get 5. Bring down the rest of the problem. 4 plus 6 squared times 5. Next thing I do is the exponent, so I change that color to blue. I get 36. Bring down that I'm going to add 4 to that eventually, and I'm going to multiply that by 5. Next thing is multiply. Before I add, I get 180. Bring down that I have to add 4 for my next step, and this total is 184 for the value of this numerical expression. And then we took it a step further. What if I'm using variables, and now I go from a numerical expression to a variable expression? And remember, these are letters are called variables because they can vary or change with whatever you want the variable to be equal to. So this time I said let a equal 3, b is equal to 6, and c is equal to 4. So you're going to substitute, just like you do in soccer. If I substitute Bart in for Josh, out comes Josh, in goes Art. I'm going to swap out comes A, and in goes 3 where A was. So now it says 4 times 3 squared plus 7 times, this means 7 groups of whatever's in brackets. So it's 7 groups of whatever's in brackets. I swap out the B and put in 6 because it says B is 6. I swap out the C and put in 4 because it says C is 4. And now I have a numerical expression that I simplify in order of operation. So brackets first, I get 2. Then I bring down that I'm going to multiply 7 times that 2 because the number times anything in brackets, this is multiplication, even though there's no raised dot or no multiplication symbol. This means 7 times the difference of b minus c. So b minus c is 2, so 7 times 2. I bring down my next steps, just carry them down. Next step is to simplify the exponent, so I bring down my 9. Next step is to multiply 7 times 2, which is 14. And 4 times 9 is 36. And my last step is to add, and that's 50, which I just didn't get written there. So 36 and 14 is 50, and you would circle it. In real life, you might use this idea in taking temperatures that are in the United States in Fahrenheit degrees and changing them to Celsius. So if I told you the words, take the Fahrenheit temperature and subtract 32, then multiply by 5 and divide by 9, you can translate that into a mathematical numerical expression. So let's say it's 68 degrees today in California, and I want to know what would that temperature be in Vienna. How do I get to 20 degrees? Well, the words say to take the Fahrenheit temperature, 68, subtract 32, and I do that first, so I must put it in brackets. Then I'm going to multiply all that by 5. Remember, to show multiplication with something with brackets, I have 5 groups of this. So the 5 goes out in front, and then I'm going to divide the entire thing by 9. This is a grouping symbol. It says do all that first, and the last thing I do is divide by 9. So if you do the subtraction and you multiply by 5 and divide by 9, you get 20 degrees Celsius. So if it's 68 degrees in California, in Vienna, that same temperature on the Celsius scale is about 20 degrees. And then you practice this in your groups. Remember, brackets, exponents, multiply or divide, add or subtract last. And what you did in your groups is you guys knew you do 5 first, and then the 4 squared is 16. And then you've got 100 minus 5 times 16 divided by 5, so you multiply first. 5 times 16 is 180, then you divide that by 5 and get back to 16, and 100 minus 16 gave us a total of 84. At the end it was 84. All right, so remember, I gave you back your quizzes. We talked about how do you study for a quiz. You want to make sure you actually reread the lessons in your book, watch the screencast on Moodle, go back over the homework you did. Make sure you understand the mistakes you made on your homework because you will have written them in with your pen. So the retake for your second quiz is today, Monday after school, or tomorrow or Wednesday at lunch. Get a hall pass from me if you decide to do it during lunch. And then you had to put that quick quiz in your assessment section of your binder. Remember, you need to give me that that original quiz back and prove to me you know how to do those problems before you do the retake. All right, and we actually went over those problems. So on that quick quiz 2, these were the answers to to number 1, A, B, and C. So look how you make it a rational number by making this a fraction. You put the negative 12 over 1. Percent means out of 100. 4.5 you put over 1. And then you need to make it so there's an integer in the numerator, so you multiply both the numerator and denominator by 10 and you get 45 tenths. Or you could just double both of them and get 9 over 2. These are both correct. In fact, there are infinite correct answers. And then on your example of a measure, I said, give me a real life example. So here's my height, 165 centimeters. There are infinite examples. I have a count. I count 5 people in a group. Okay, the question on you go 8 kilometers in a quarter of an hour. What's your rate in kilometers per hour? Well, you need to know that there are 4 quarters in one whole, or a quarter of an hour is 15 minutes. 15 minutes times 4 gives you 1 hour of 60 minutes. So if I have 4 groups of 15 minutes in an hour, or 4 quarters, I need 4 groups of 8 kilometers, so it's 32 kilometers per hour. And the last ones we're simplifying. Again, if I multiply by 100, I move the decimal twice, and I get 230. This was 5 squared. 5 times 5 is 25. If I multiply 2 and 3/10 times 10 to the 5th, I'm really multiplying that by a 1 followed by 5 zeros, which is 100,000. But the shortcut is move the decimal 5 places to the right, and I get 230,000. And 369 thousandths times 10 squared, move the decimal twice to the right, and I get 36 and 9/10. So those were the correct answers on the quiz. And then you have some practice to do. Choose basic or challenge. It's up to you. And that's it. Thanks.